Hey everybody, it's Jamie. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk all about budgeting on a low income. My goal of this video is to provide you with really practical tips to use to help you budget on a low income. And one of the most practical things you can do is get a budget spreadsheet or a budget template that you can actually use to put your numbers into your income and your expenses so you know exactly where you're at. So right now, if you're watching this video and don't have a budget spreadsheet, I got a link to a couple down in the description. One's an annual budget spreadsheet. It's the same exact one we use, and we use zero-based budgeting. And if you're unfamiliar with zero-based budgeting, I've got a link to a video up in the cards here and in the description to talk you through how zero-based budgeting works. And the second one is a monthly budget spreadsheet, which follows the same principles of a zero-based budget. It's just broken down into individual months. Once you have a budgeting spreadsheet, the next thing you need to do is actually know your income and expenses. And I'm not talking like, I know I have all these bills, I know a general idea of what my income is. I'm talking knowing exactly how much income you're bringing in every single month and exactly what your expenses are and how much every single one of them costs. So if you're somebody who keeps track of your budget and your expenses and your income in your head, I highly recommend right now finding a piece of paper or something to write down all of your income and all of your expenses and exactly how much each of those things are. Because when you're budgeting on a low income, one of the most important things you can do is take tally and account for all of the income coming in and all of the expenses going out, so you know exactly where you stand every month of whether you have enough income to cover your expenses, and if you don't, to make some really solid plans to make sure that your income is equal to or greater than your expenses. So as you're writing down all of your income and expenses, one of the things I want to stress is bills. You gotta know exactly when your bills are due, so writing down due dates on the piece of paper. You can even, if you got a smartphone, plug these things right into your phone and set an alarm to go maybe a day or two before that bill is due, so you give yourself plenty of time to make sure that gets paid on time and you've got the money in your account. All right, my second tip to help you budget on a low income is to really know exactly why you want to make a budget in the first place. And this might seem really obvious, like, duh, Jamie, I want to make a budget so that I'm not losing money every month. But when you have really specific intentional goals that you are working towards, you can view your budget more as a tool to help you reach your goals rather than what a lot of people view a budget as this really restrictive device that is telling you what you can't spend money on. One of the best tips I have for budgeting on a low income is to build an emergency fund. Now, why is an emergency fund really important if you have a low income? An emergency fund helps you plan ahead for anything unexpected that might come your way. Car repairs, house repairs, any unexpected medical expenses, really anything unexpected. There's a lot of things that could happen that ends up costing extra money. Your emergency fund can be an amazing tool to help you cover those expenses without affecting your monthly budget. If you end up having $1,000 worth of car repairs and you're already on a low income, trying to fit that into your budget is going to be near impossible to do. But if you have an emergency fund set up that's got a couple of $1,000s in it and your monthly budget and your bills are all still going to be able to be paid on time, it's not going to affect your long-term goals and even your short-term goals of making sure you're just paying all your bills on time. A couple of years ago, our furnace broke in December, which is the middle of winter here in Minnesota, where it gets super duper cold. I'm talking sometimes 20 below zero. And to be without a furnace with that, with a kid, with dogs, trying to live that out, not super good. But with an emergency fund, we're able to call up somebody to repair it the next day and just pay them whatever it needed to cost for us to have heat in our house. So we felt so much less stress about having to spend that money on a really, really basic need of heating our house. Another side effect of saving money every month for an emergency fund is it builds the confidence to save money. And one great way to do that is with automatic transfers to your savings account every month. That's what we do. Make sure that money automatically goes into our savings account. The next practical thing I would do budgeting on a low income is find expenses to get rid of. So I'm talking things that you all out don't need or are not a priority right now. When I'm looking at cutting things out of my budget, the first things I'm going to eliminate are the things that I don't care about. For example, if you don't care about having a gazillion channels on cable, get rid of cable. And this is going to be different for every single person because we all have the things that we care about and the things that we don't. So based off of your goals and priorities that you've set up, if something doesn't align with that, or if there's an expense that is just extra and a nice thing to have, cut those things out of your budget for right now until down the road maybe you have more income and you can add those things back into your budget. Or if they become more of a priority and other things become less of a priority, you can always swap out budget categories. If you can't all out eliminate a budget category, the next best thing is to maybe lower the amount on one or several budget categories. It's going to free up overall money in your budget. So when you're budgeting on a low income, it gives you just a little bit extra to play with to reach some of your financial goals or just make sure that all of your bills are paid on time. You've got 3 tips left for budgeting on a low income. The next one is to get organized. I already mentioned having a budget spreadsheet to enter all your income and expenses, but 2 more specific things about getting organized. One is another budgeting method called the cash envelope system. My wife and I use this for a few years and we took certain expenses like groceries, like putting gas in our car, date night, household stuff like laundry, detergent, and soap. We took that money out of our account and paid for those things with cash. A couple cool things happen when you choose to use the cash envelope system or pay for certain expenses with cash. Number one, studies have shown that you tend to spend less money when you're using cash. You're actually watching it part from your hand or from your wallet, and that overall just causes you to spend less. Also, it helps you be really intentional and planning out your spending ahead of time, which is a big part of having a budget anyway. But when you plan out your expenses ahead of time and you take out cash, once that cash is gone, you can't overspend in that category. It helps you really prioritize the things you need versus maybe some things you want. So if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend using cash envelopes. And if you don't like the idea of carrying cash around with you everywhere you go, afraid you're gonna lose it or don't like the hassle of going to a bank, you can try digital cash envelopes with Cube Money. I've made a whole nother video on that. You can click the card up here or check the description for a link down below to watch a video all about digital cash envelopes with Cube Money. The next part of organization is have an organized time set up where you can actually go through and update your budget. I like to do this at least every other weekend right after I get paid. But if you are just starting a budget, every weekend is a really good time to budget and set aside time to do that. If you're doing it every weekend, you probably need 20, maybe 30 minutes to update your budget with your new expenses from that week. And when you take time to do it every week, it really builds up the discipline, the intentionality. And a couple magic things happen when you take the time to be organized and budget every single week. Number one, you get to know your income and expenses like the back of your hand. You're going to know this stuff really well and how much you have allotted for each budget category, but also it's going to allow you to build up that discipline to make sure you're tracking your expenses, and you want to make sure that it is intentionally going to a bill, an expense, or one of your goals or priorities. So I already mentioned cutting expenses when you're budgeting on low income, but the flip side of that is to increase your income in some way. So looking at your situation, is there any way you can take on maybe a second job part-time? My wife and I did this for years. We worked front desk at a hotel. My wife worked in retail. We both worked at a fancy Italian restaurant as a server and a bartender. We found ways to work these second jobs on nights or weekends to bring in a little extra money to really help us when we were paraprofessionals making less than $40,000 combined, and we had $100,000 of debt between us. Like that was a low income, and we had to find ways to increase our income, and a second job part-time really helped us do that. Another awesome way to increase your income, at least in the short term, is to sell stuff that you don't need in your house. Facebook Marketplace is an incredible way to do this. I made a whole video on that. You can check out the card up there. Tips to list and sell your products on Facebook Marketplace. And the last tip I have for you for budgeting on low income is to always be flexible and adaptive. A big part of budgeting, no matter how you do it, whether it's with cash envelopes or a zero-based budget, is to be flexible and adapt to the situations. During the month, if you're realizing that you're needing to spend more money on food, maybe finding a way to cut expenses in a different category and you're maximizing the income that you are bringing in. And if you're finding that every single month you just got a couple unexpected expenses, maybe things that you forgot or things that popped up in the month, a really great and I think really necessary budget category is miscellaneous expenses. This is something you can put $50 or $100 into this category to cover anything you might have forgotten. It helps if you went over budget in a category. This can offset that a little bit and you can start pulling it out of this miscellaneous budget category. And it's just another way to be flexible and adaptive with your budget every single month. And lastly, to really help you implement some of these tips that I mentioned cash envelopes. I got a whole video on how to get started using cash envelopes. So I hope these were helpful tips for budgeting on a low income. Thanks for watching the video. If you are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, ding the bell so you get notified for new videos, and we'll talk to you next time.